Some weeks, visiting the comic book store is all about the hunt to find a specific book, and this day was one of those days. I actually went to 2 stores today to find the book that I wanted in this week's episode of My Wednesday Comics. So last episode, if you remember, I actually highlighted this book, G.I.JOE issue 302, A Real American Hero by Larry Hama and Chris Mooneyham. I didn't want to review it last week though because I found out the new creative chapter involving Skybound Entertainment actually started in issue 301. They didn't have it in this first store that I went to. So that was the book I was looking for today. And shout out to Mission Comics in the city, but they had 1 copy left on their rack. So I grabbed it, and I'm super excited to go through both of those with you guys today. Another book that I saw back in December is called Our Bones Dust, which is a really interesting title. This is by an artist by the name of Ben Stenbeck. He wrote and drew this book. I saw it on the rack and it piqued my interest, but I didn't pick it up. And then when I went back the next week to look for it, I couldn't find it. So again, I found this at Mission Comics. I was excited that I got a second chance to pick it up. And finally, last week I had mentioned that another store in the city, Comics Experience, was having a customer appreciation month for the month of January. Today's way that they were appreciating their customers was making all of their dollar books a quarter. So I had to go and see what they had. Rifled through their boxes and found 3 issues of a book that came out of Image in 1996 called Vanguard, Strange Visitors. The writer is Gary Carlson and the artists are Scot Eaton and Bill Anderson. So it'll be really interesting to look through this blast from the past with you guys today. So let's get to it. All right, this first book, G.I.JOE, A Real American Hero by Larry Hama and Chris Mooneyham. I love this cover. It immediately is reminiscent of what you would expect from classic G.I.JOE. The cover is actually by Andy Kubert. When I first saw it, it reminded me of like box art from G.I.JOE, the classic G.I.JOE yearbook cover by Michael Golden, or even issue 1 of G.I.JOE here. It just has that, all the G.I.JOE characters mounted on top of a tank coming at you. So this book is the beginning of Skybound's involvement, from what I understand, of revamping the universe of G.I.JOE. I guess this is under the umbrella of the Energon Universe. And the great thing is they got Larry Hama to continue writing. He is arguably the best G.I.JOE writer out there. The way that the writing is and the dialogue and the narration are so classic G.I.JOE. It respects the property so much, but it's also really tongue-in-cheek of, kids playing with military toys and kind of the history of where G.I.JOE came from. So from what I understand, I talked to the owner at Mission Comics about this storyline, and it's just continuing on from the 300 previous issues of continuity. So it's not like they're changing anything, they're not revamping anything, just kind of a continuation. And I got that as I was reading this story. There were certain aspects that I was like, oh, it seems like this was set up in previous issues. And I'm not a regular reader of G.I.JOE, so there's a little bit of that, like the depth of my knowledge of G.I.JOE isn't like a diehard fan, but the things that I love about G.I.JOE, which are the overtop characters, the intense sci-fi military action, the weird personalities and crazy action sequences, and the villains also, all of that is here in this new series. So here's Serpentor Khan and Wild Bill. He's pulling off this like crazy airplane move, similar to how Daniel Warren Johnson is treating Transformers. I feel like they're giving the same treatment to G.I. Joe, and Duke also, like the issue we reviewed last week. Just the stakes are really high, over the top, very dramatic, and super respectful of the original IP. So like, here's some backstory that I wasn't totally familiar with, what was going on, why Cobra Commander was there, but you kind of don't need to know that. Cobra Commander is still very much Cobra Commander, doing kind of crazy shenanigans that are narcissistic and egotistical, wearing crazy armor, shipwreck, all the classic characters here. And so the premise is Serpentor is about to, or he detonates this bomb to wipe out their base, probably because they were under attack by the G.I. Joe, and he knew they were going to lose. But this bomb infects everybody in there to become cannibals. So there is like a zombie aspect coming into play here, which zombies sell, but here you go. So all the characters, or the villains that are contained within that headquarters, are all turned into cannibals, including Serpentor and Dr. Mindbender. I totally forgot this, but I forgot that Dr. Mindbender was a orthodontist. The colors are beautiful, really well done. Primaries, but very poppy, and the artwork is excellent. I'm not familiar with Chris Mooneyham's work, but he's really, really good, and his style actually melds very well with the other artists in the Energon Universe. I think Larry Hama is the linchpin here of making sure that G.I. Joe is respected, and the canon is consistent, and the tone is perfect. Really great. They do this nice little like headshots of key characters in the book and their bios to give you a refresher of who they are. So I don't know this character. I didn't grow up with this character. And then there's this new character here, this robot guy I'm not familiar with, but most of them I am. There it is, Dr. Mindbender. Peaceful orthodontist turned vain and hateful by his own invention. And then Chris Mooneyham gives a little letter. I love this because it's just respect for the property. And he talks about how he was never a fan of G.I. Joe, and yet he was a military brat. And he kind of tapped into that and is now becoming a huge fan. So kudos to him. Love these little thumbnails here on the side. So that was the first issue. And then the second issue, the one I picked up last week, now I could actually read it. And starts off with that image of fallen soldier. Check this out. I saw this and I was like, that looks familiar. And I'll give you guys a second to think of what that might come from. But here it is. I flipped into the Dark Knight, and lo and behold, there's something very familiar with that character pose, that mutant character there in the corner. I thought that was a cool little nod to Frank Miller. So now the bad guys and those who are inhabited the island, it was a casino, they're all eating each other. So that's another thing that Larry Hama brings in. It's a nice sense of humor, that tongue-in-cheek that I was mentioning earlier. When these properties like G.I. Joe, like Transformers, and I'll even throw He-Man in there, when they don't take themselves super seriously and they kind of know what they're about, that's where they really shine. And I felt that in these books. Here's Serpentor. But in these revamps, they're taking it up a notch from what we remembered as kids. So that's pretty cool for us now grown up as adults. This whole sequence right here, this military funeral that takes place in Arlington, is beautifully composed. I feel like Mooneyham must have been referencing like the movie The Rock or A Few Good Men, just these like very classic military movies, because these shots are really reminiscent of that. The 21 gun salute, the folding of the flag in the rain, really great compositions here. So it's this kind of sad funeral, even this like slow zoom in to this memorial. It's great mood setting. And then you get a crazy Cobra Commander in his classic outfit giving some sort of political speech And this is pretty funny because the people in the audience are actually employed by Cobra, but they're talking as like regular people. So you get to see a different side. They're not just faceless villains. Awesome. Helicopter and establishing shots. And then there's this robot who, what was his name? This is a character that I'm not familiar with. Alpha 001. I got that from the little card here. Seems to be kind of the brains of the Bats characters, but he's really cool. It gives me an Ultron vibe. G.I. Joe is surveilling the Cobra Island to figure out what they're doing. Then we get this really quiet moment here with Snake Eyes and Scarlet in a cabin in the woods. He speaks right here for the first time, and she's like, "Don't talk to me right now." Like, it's like just super sad. So great mood setting, fun start to this series. I will definitely be picking up these books as they keep going. Hopefully they can keep it up. Some cool sketches here by Mooneyham, and then a preview of Duke, which we looked at previous episode. So yeah, G.I. Joe, awesome start. Second book is Our Bones Dust by Ben Stenbeck, who is the writer and artist, and Dave Stewart is the colorist. It seems like Dave Stewart is coloring everything these days. I didn't know Ben Stenbeck before this book, and I looked him up, and he's done a lot of work with Mike Mignola in the Mignola verse, like a bunch of Hellboy stuff. I think he did a Frankenstein thing too. So most of his major books that he worked on were with Mignola, and I think this is his first foray out creating his own book, which is great to see. What attracted me to this book, the first time that I peeked into it, was A, post-apocalyptic. I'm in. That 90% of the time I'm already in. And then B, I loved this crazy robot design. It's so unique, so different, and you'll see it in following pages. Surprisingly, when I was looking at his work that he did with Mignola, definitely looked like it was influenced by Mignola and the style of his world, and that was probably intentional, but you don't really feel it in his own work. So that's great to see him kind of come into his own and lean into his own style. This is the case of like really unique design. Like when you, or I mean, maybe he's not a robot, maybe he's an alien, but it looks like a robot alien, I guess. When you have to design a robot, it's easy to go pick the standard tropes of what a robot would look like, really mechanical and wires and segments and whatnot. So this organic alien feel to it is what stood out to me. And then also the colors are very unique, very different. There's this human character, lots of skulls. I'm gonna say that's Mignola's influence. There's a lot of nice just storytelling, visual storytelling moments without much dialogue that adds to that vast expanse, that loneliness in space or on this planet. Maybe it's Earth, I'm not sure, I haven't read it yet. Awesome stuff, great designs, great figure work, nice environments, nice color. Overall, a great, solid first issue. I haven't read it yet, so I don't know the extent of the story, but it looks really cool. And this robot guy totally sold me. And there we go. Our Bones Dust. And finally, here is Vanguard, Strange Visitors by Gary Carlson is the writer and co-creator. Erik Larsen is also co-creator. So I believe Vanguard was, it seems like, I think Gary Carlson and Erik Larsen were old childhood friends when Erik Larsen kind of made his way up in the ranks of Marvel and Spider-Man and all the books that he worked on, and then eventually Savage Dragon at Image. He decided to revamp Vanguard and bring him along. So this is kind of in the same universe as Dragon, and Gary Carlson is one of the co-creators. So he wrote it, and then the artist is Scot Eaton, and Bill Anderson is the inker. What I love about this book, and you've already seen it, is that they produced it in black and white. And I think that was to keep costs down, I'm guessing. But I love it. It's like an artist edition without being an artist edition. And you guys all know how much I'm a sucker for black and white comics. The only other time that I was exposed to Vanguard was the original. So this must be a miniseries because the original series Vanguard came out, and I picked up this issue a long time ago that Jason Pearson drew. But that was my only exposure to the character. And he's kind of an interesting design with these fins and very alien looking. And to be honest, I never saw a really great rendition of him. Even Jason Pearson, who I love, he's just a weird design. But that's pretty common with Erik Larsen's world. He has a unique sense of design with his characters. Vanguard is no different. I'm not familiar with Scot Eaton's work. He's a solid artist. He draws anatomy really well. He fills the page. The inker is really solid. And so it's fun. It's just kind of this fun. I almost don't want to see it in colors. That's a really fun drawing right there of Vanguard coming at us. Just the way that he's treating the shadows, and it's awesome. It's very Image, very like veins popping out all over the place, huge muscles, but it's a fond period in time. So I picked up, I found in the dollar box issues 1, 3, and 4. And I think it's a 4-issue series, so I'm missing issue 2. And now I've got to find it, right? Otherwise I won't know what's going on, really. And I'm a little bit of a completist that way, where I feel like I need to complete the set. Superhero comics mixed with Image, mixed with indie book feel. This is the character Supreme, which is in Rob Liefeld's universe, Extreme Universe. Each issue ends with a huge pin-up splash muscle shot. And then here's issue 4. These are more Dragon characters: Freak Force, Super Patriot, Dragon, and then Vanguard. There's Bad Rock, I believe, from Youngblood. Wham! That's a great splash page. Muscles. Muscles upon muscles upon veins. It's fun and exciting, and it's really fun. I think that a lot of comics these days, at least right now, have this realism to them. Very slick realism. And when I was looking at this book, which came out in 1996, it felt totally different. It felt more lighthearted and over the top and exaggerated, which I think is missing a little bit in comics. There's not that many people that go super exaggerated anymore. This face reminds me almost of an Adam Hughes face. Super realistic, great expression. So fun stuff. Definitely have to find issue 2 now. I was scouring through the box to see. I was like, it has to be here. Issue 2 has to be there. But it wasn't. So now I'm gonna have to find it online somewhere. So that's Vanguard Strange Visitors. Here are the 3 covers next to each other. That's comics. So that was an interesting mix of books this week. Some new, some I missed from a couple weeks ago, and some that I just discovered for the first time from years ago. I've started recently watching videos of comic book store owners who are talking about what books are coming out each week. Everybody has their books that they anticipate and are expecting, but when you walk into a store, you don't know what you might run into. I love that. I love that about walking into the physical store and just browsing each rack and digging through multiple times just to make sure I've seen every book that's out there. You really find cool things that you wouldn't have discovered before. And also you run into people the other people who are looking for books or the people that own the stores, that they all have an opinion on what they like best or what they think is the best book. They all have their staff picks, and sometimes they line up with you and sometimes they don't, but people are super passionate about the things that they love, and that fan aspect of it really resonates with me. And then also the collector aspect of it, like I'd mentioned at the beginning, that hunt, like when you want something, and this is where eBay comes in, but just when you walk into a store too, when you're looking for something specific, the excitement of the hunt to find it is part of comics. And that's why I love digging through the dollar bin. Like today, I didn't know what I was gonna find, and it was a smattering of things that I would never read, and some things that I was like, oh, I'd buy that for $0.25. And then on top of it, there's the stories and the characters and the artwork that you fall in love with too. So I hope that just watching me talk about these things and seeing the books that I highlight, hopefully that piques your interest as well. The more people that are excited about comics, the better. The more we can share with each other. And now with YouTube and all the social media, like the network is just growing and growing and growing. Another thing I want to mention is this Friday, I'm trying out a new kind of video, a new kind of stream with a guest. And I don't want to talk about it too much because I know that my Wednesday comics videos usually come out Friday. And if this video comes out, if I talk about it and this video comes out after it, then I'll be talking about something that happened in the past. And it'll be, I don't know, it'll be weird. It's like Back to the Future logic a little bit. If you're watching this, you would have already seen it. But if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do so. Make sure you like this video, comment on it. I love reading people's comments. More and more people are commenting, which is fun. And share, just let your friends know about this channel. I'd really appreciate it. It helps with the momentum that we're kind of building here, and you'll get to know about other videos that I'm trying out. I'm really trying to produce more content for this channel, different kinds of content, and also continue with these kind of videos every Wednesday about the books that I pick up. Thanks again for coming, and I will see you next week.